He's in a wheelchair. My husband, not his cruel brother. My revenge did this. I used to say those words in my head like a punishment, like a rosary I had to finger through, bead by bead, every time I lifted him from the bed to the chair, every time I waited at the bottom of the apartment stairs because the elevator jammed again, every time a stranger's eyes slid from my face to the footrests to the rigid belt strapped across his hips. He was the kind one, the steady one, the one who should have been spared. And yet I wasn't the sort of person who got spared. I suppose that's the moral everyone wants, tidy as a proverb. Play with fire, get burned. But it's never clean like that. Fire licks, smoke blinds, and when the flames are out, you still have to scrub the walls, live in the smell. I met Evan when I was 23, cashiering at the hardware store on Willow. He came in for drywall anchors and left with my number. He laughed with his whole face, that kind of laugh people imitate later when they tell the story of him. His brother, Liam, trailed behind like a darker echo, better jawline, worse eyes. Liam always seemed to be counting the room and finding it short of what he deserved. He was the sort of man who took up space with complaints. He didn't exactly flirt with me, he tested me. He'd take a long look at my name tag and say, Maya, that's a lot of vowels for someone who didn't bag my screws properly. I assumed marriage would shrink the brother-shaped problem. It didn't. The problem moved in like damp. Liam borrowed money without asking because we're family. He forgot to send it back because money is such a small thing to people who have love. He showed up unannounced, sometimes drunk, sometimes carrying a massive TV he needed to store for a while, sometimes with a woman whose mascara looked like a painting melted in the rain. He ate our leftovers with theatrical sighs, as if we'd begged him to. He looked at me and said the sort of things you can't quite quote because they fall just one level below explicit. If I told Evan he touched my shoulder and didn't move his hand, I sounded paranoid, jealous, brittle. Liam was careful like that. He wanted to be the story and the narrator both. On our wedding night, Liam gave a toast that started like a joke and ended like a threat. He said to Evan, the golden boy, the good boy, the boy who got the girl. And to Maya, who will learn that in this family we share. The room laughed because he smiled when he said it. The room laughed because people laugh when they don't want to make a mess. I laughed too. Later, I cried in the hotel bathroom and told Evan I was overwhelmed. I folded my shame into neat small squares and put it in the drawer with the leftover mints. On weekdays, I worked at a vet clinic answering phones and cleaning fur tumbleweeds from beneath the reception couch. On weekends, Liam's chaos was our second job. He crashed on our couch in August and again in November, and then in February after he got into a fight at Murphy's and claimed the bouncer threw him when he had only, according to him, helped the floor reach me faster. He took Evan's old jacket and said he thought it was his. He pulled me into the kitchen once and told me I had a strong back for a small girl as I carried a case of sparkling water. He put his palm on my waist and said, Evan's lucky. I stepped away so quickly that I banged my hip on the oven door. He laughed softly. We're family, he said. Don't be weird. I kept a diary because I had been taught that documentation mattered. Write it all down, a college counselor once told me when I reported a professor who liked to adjust our desks and accidentally brush knees. But my diary felt like a list of ghosts. If you handed it to a lawyer, you'd watch them tilt the pages under the light, searching for bruises shaped like facts. Meanwhile, the bruises I had were of the slower sort. They bloomed at night when I replayed conversations. They pressed fingerprints into my shoulders when I stood at the sink and scrubbed a pan clean that had never gotten dirty. The day that sealed our fate started with a small thing. Everything does. Liam arrived at noon not asking, to watch the game at our place because Jenny changed the Netflix password again and I refused to be emotionally blackmailed. He wanted to drink beer and spread his legs and talk about his ex as if she were both a villain and an idiot. He wanted to ask me if I had any girly snacks. He wanted to complain that the chili I made had flavor notes of resentment. I wanted to call my mother, but my mother would say, life is messy, men are messier, be gracious, be bigger. I had already exhausted the universe of being bigger. The only thing bigger was a plan. I started with something childish, I wanted him to be humiliated. Not hurt, humiliated. A slap on his myth. A bruise to his ego. That's the part of this I still clutch when I'm bargaining with my shame at 3 a.m. I didn't want blood. I wanted him to be smaller for once than his noise. I set up a meeting he couldn't resist. Liam hated nothing more than being left out. I created a new email, a female name he didn't know, Elena, and wrote him a story. I'd seen him at Murphy's. I thought he was, God save me, magnetic, and I had a business proposition I didn't want to discuss over text because my ex was nosy. I dangled a number, $5,000. I said I had a line on some concert wristbands that could be flipped if he helped with logistics. I told him to meet me Sunday night at the old co-working loft on Sutton, the one that closed during the pandemic and stayed only half alive thanks to the landlord's inertia. I knew the side door code because my friend Chloe had worked there and never forgot anything. I told Liam to come alone and, crucially, to wear decent shoes because the stairs were slick. I bought a cheap tripod and a phone mount online and rehearsed how to angle it from the mezzanine to capture the door. I planned to record him strutting in, tossing his head, trying on that predatory charm, and then for no one to come. I wanted to watch the tape later with Evan and say, "Do you see?" Not because I wanted Evan to leave him. Liam was a constant no one could leave, like gravity, but because I wanted to move the dial of belief a degree. I did one more foolish thing. I bought a bottle of biodegradable soap concentrate and poured some in the entry just inside the door where the concrete slope kissed the first wooden stair. It felt like the right kind of mean, theatrical, reversible. He would slip and sit down hard, bang his pride on the wood. He'd swear. I'd have him on camera, off balance and ridiculous, and if he tried to turn it on me, I could shrug. A leak? Condensation? You were drunk? It was juvenile, yes, but I was exhausted with being reasonable. My heart was a kettle screaming on a back burner no one could hear. Sunday evening, I told Evan I was going to Chloe's to help with a resume. Evan kissed my forehead and said, "You're a good friend." He asked if I'd grab milk on my way home. I said yes and added milk to a life that needed so little but demanded so much. At the loft, I turned on the hallway light and checked the tripod twice. The air smelled like dust settling after a parade. I texted "leaving now" from Elena's email to Liam's phone. The phone pinged back immediately. Be there in 10. And Elena, if this is a prank, I will be very disappointed in you, winky face. He sent a winking face. My skin crawled. I heard footsteps on the stairwell at 8:52. My camera app showed the entry rectangle in grainy gray-blue, the kind of color that makes you think of things that happen just out of sight. The latch clacked. The door pushed inward. A figure stepped through. "Liam?" I called softly from the mezzanine, even though that wasn't the plan. I had wanted silence. Control. But familiarity leaped out of me like a reflex. The figure froze, turned upward, lifted a hand to shield his eyes from the stairwell light. The voice that came back was a knife cutting through my script. "Maya?" I don't remember deciding to run. I only know my feet hit the first stair before I had a thought to put behind them. Evan stood in the doorway, not Liam, framed by the too bright edge light. He had my text thread with Liam open on his phone. Yes, I had used my own phone to bait Liam, too careless in the click frenzy of deceit, and now my husband's face wore that expression you pray to never see, concern turning over into fear that its origin is you. "What is this?" he asked, stepping inside. "Maya, what?" His heel met the soap-slick slope. The sentence stopped. Physics took over, indifferent as always. He didn't tumble headfirst. He did a terrible, slow split of a person who trusts the floor and finds it gone. His legs slid out, his back tried to sit where there was no chair, and then the left side of him met the edge of the third stair with a sound that shouldn't come from a human body. He gasped like a diver surfacing too fast. I saw his head strike, controlled but still sickening, guided by panic's stupid hand. The moment after an accident is not a moment. It's a smashed mirror, 100 angles of the same disaster. In one shard, I'm screaming his name. In another, my hands hover, useless as butterfly wings, terrified to touch him and make it worse. In another, I slip too and catch myself with a palm that burns raw. In one shard that still wakes me at night, I look up at the phone on the tripod and see the red recording light, see the black pit of the lens opening its uncaring eye to everything. He tried to push himself up. His legs did not cooperate. The absence was instant and huge. His breath turned to a whine he tried to restrain and could not. He didn't ask, "What did you do?" He asked, "Can you call an ambulance?" And he asked it gently, because that's who he was, who he is, even when pain turns people into strangers. I told the truth quickly because I couldn't stand the cost of another lie. At the hospital, while a nurse wrapped a blood pressure cuff around his arm, I said, I did something unbelievably stupid. It took hours to tell it all. It took seconds for the MRI to return with words that felt plucked from a dystopia: incomplete spinal cord injury, thoracic level. I found myself Googling while a doctor spoke softly about prognosis, about what incomplete can mean, about therapy and wheelchairs, and how a person is not the sum of what they cannot do. The words sank and bobbed in me like coins thrown into a fountain that wishes nothing back. Evan didn't accuse me in the hospital. He didn't accuse me when we came home, and the front door frame suddenly looked like a measurement of our losses. He saved his one accusation for months later, when I woke to him crying in the dark, and he said, not with anger, but with a disbelief that still clung to him like static, "Why didn't you tell me he was that bad to you?" Because he wouldn't have believed me? Because I didn't think I deserved the energy it would take to be believed? Because women are taught to carry, to manage, to knit safety nets with their own bodies? Pick any answer, and it will be truer than it is complete. Liam, in the immediate aftermath, did what men like him do. He made it about himself. He arrived at the hospital with a bouquet big enough to hide behind and cried loudly in the waiting room. He posted a filtered photo of himself holding Evan's hand with the caption, "Family first," and 3 prayer hand emojis. He told anyone who would listen that he'd always warned Evan about risky old buildings, as if the stairs had leapt up on their own. He looked at me with theatrically wounded eyes and said, "If you needed help planning a surprise, you could have asked me." He knows, of course he knows. He saw the camera when we collected our scattered life from the loft. He knows my hand made the floor slick. But he also knows I will not ruin Evan with the public truth. He knows shame buys silence. So now I learn. I learn the methodical choreography of transfers, bed to chair to car, the pivot that is part physics and part trust. I learn which curbs slope and which ones will catch a wheel like a hook. I learn the humiliations of paperwork and the weird intimacy of strangers who speak to me instead of him, as if a chair erases a voice. I learn how grief can sit quietly at the table and let you eat and still hold your throat the whole time. People bring casseroles. People offer to start GoFundMes. People say accidents happen and look secretly grateful that this one didn't happen to them. My mother cries because she raised me to be careful and generous, and I have been careless and mean. Evan's father hugs me and says nothing because he doesn't know a sentence that can hold both my guilt and his sorrow. Our apartment fills with handrails. Our calendar fills with appointments. Our jokes change shape. I say, "At least your legs will never fall asleep during a long movie again," and he snorts and says, "My left foot still tingles sometimes like there's a ghost texting it." I fall in love with him again in tiny ways. He refuses self-pity like a rejected drink. He lets it come in, tastes it, grimaces, pushes it away. He lets me see the worst nights, but he doesn't chain me to them. We sleep side by side like 2 people in a rowboat learning to adjust for each other's weight. He apologizes to me for ruining our hiking plans, and I want to shake him and say, I ruined something much bigger, but the truth is not a baton to pass back and forth. It's a weather we live under. Sometimes I see a version of myself in the glass of the microwave door when I heat his tea, and I do not recognize her. That woman wanted spectacle. That woman thought humiliation was a clean instrument. That woman believed in moral math. Do X to a bad man, yield Y catharsis. I don't believe in that math anymore. I believe in entropy. I believe a single push can scatter 1,000 plates you didn't mean to throw. Liam continues to orbit, a planet that believes it is a sun. He brings takeout unasked and then sighs about how it's so hard to find time to be generous. He calls me kiddo, like we are doing a bit we never agreed on. One afternoon, after a physical therapy session that left Evan shaking with effort and pride, Liam leaned in our doorway and said, "You know, I always thought Evan would be the one to take care of me." Funny how life works. He smiled as if he were confiding a joke with the punchline still in transit. That night, I opened the file on my phone labeled Sutton. I hadn't watched it since the day after the hospital, when I made myself once as penance. The video starts with an empty frame, the door a slab of white, the glow above it buzzing faintly. Then the door opens and my husband steps in, the man who could fix a leaky sink with a string of swear words and a grace I admired in private, and he looks up and says my name. I closed the file and then, in a clench of resolve that felt both righteous and small, I texted Liam, "Meet me at Murphy's tomorrow afternoon. No games." He wrote back, finally, winky face. I was there first, in a booth sticky with 100 old laughs. He slid in across from me, cologne and sin. "So," he said, "you done being mad at me for nothing?" I looked down at my hands and thought, you could destroy him with a single upload. You could burn the last bridge he stands on, salt the river beneath. But the ash would be Evan's too. I was wise enough now to know that. I was also wise enough to know men like Liam never reform through shame. They sidestep it, rename it, turn it into theater. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly, the kind of quiet that sharpens a room. "You are going to help pay for an accessible van. You're going to cover the cost of the contractor to put in a ramp at the back entrance. You're going to do it without posting a single photo of yourself holding a drill or smiling next to a receipt. You're going to do it because you owe him, not because you want to look like someone who pays." He opened his mouth, ready to joke, to ooze out of responsibility. I leaned forward. "If you don't," I said, "I will send a video to Jenny, to your boss, to your mother, to anyone who has ever looked at you and wondered what was wrong. I won't put it on the internet. I will put it exactly where it will make you the most tired. I will attend to this the way I attend to everything I love, patiently, relentlessly." He stared at me like a tourist realizing the city had teeth. He lifted his glass. "That's blackmail," he said lightly. "That's logistics," I said. He paid. He complained. He showed up with a contractor who called him buddy and did good work. He sent money, but always with a message that made it about the burden he bore. He was still Liam. He will always be Liam. But the ramp exists, the van exists, and Evan goes to the park now and wheels himself up the small hill just to feel the burn in his shoulders and say he did it. People like to ask me if I forgive myself. It's a question we fling at women like a parachute, as if we could tug a string and drift down gently into absolution. Forgiveness is not an exit. Forgiveness is a room in the same house where the accident happened. Some days I can sit there for an hour. Other days I can't find the door. I measure my life now in ways that would have bored the version of me who set a trap that night. I celebrate the day Evan learned a new transfer technique that made him grin like he'd found an extra hour in the day. I buy a ridiculous plant for the windowsill because the old one died and grief doesn't get to take our greens too. I sit on the floor while Evan tells me a story Liam never let him finish, and we laugh so hard my sides cramp. I feel desire come back like a song I thought I'd forgotten the words to, and I learn new ways for our bodies to say yes. Love is not a consolation prize. Love is a task and a marvel and 1,000 small decisions to stay. If I could walk back into the old co-working loft and catch my own wrist as she lifted the soap bottle, I would. Of course I would. I would whisper, humiliation isn't justice. It's a stain. But the past is a door that only opens into itself. So instead I learn how to be the person I should have been then, honest before clever, brave before strategic, and careful not because I'm scared, but because I know now how much the world can break when you pretend it will bend to your plot. Sometimes late, when the city is quiet and the hum of our new air purifier is the only sound, Evan will say, "Do you ever think we were going too fast?" And I don't know if he means the plan or the stairs or our marriage or the way we let Liam's noise drown subtle danger. I say, we are moving the speed we can. I kiss the scar near his hairline and feel its raised line under my lips like a sentence underlined, like a vow. He is in a wheelchair. My husband. He tells jokes with the exact timing he always had, the ones that make me snort and then pretend I didn't. He argues with me about movies, refuses to let me win on pity. He cries sometimes when the chair tips wrong. He holds my gaze when I plead for a forgiveness I can't yet give myself. He does not absolve me. He does not condemn me. He says, "We're here," and somehow that's both mercy and work. Liam texts me occasionally. A photo of some expensive steak, a screenshot of a bar tab, a meme about siblings. I rarely respond. The trap I set is still out there in the world, a loop of pixels that could be weapon or witness. I keep it like I keep certain aches, a reminder of what I can't afford to forget. Some stories on the internet end with revenge neat as a bow, with sisters and wives and girlfriends who pull strings and watch a man's life collapse like a stage set. My life doesn't collapse. It unfolds stubbornly into morning after morning where I make coffee, tighten a strap, wheel to the curb, double-check the ramp, press the button for the automatic door. Trade a glance with my husband that says we are more than the worst thing that happened in a stairwell. When people ask what happened, I say, an accident, because the longer version is too heavy for a stranger to carry. When they ask how we're doing, I say, we're learning, because that's the only honest verb I own now. And at night, when the lights are out and the room is a kind of dark that forgives the mess, I take Evan's hand and let it be both anchor and confession. I tell myself the line I used to speak like punishment and try to teach it to be a prayer instead. He's in a wheelchair. My husband, not his cruel brother. My revenge did this, and my love will do the rest.